All right, so declare and define how many frames we want to store. So we're going to declare a new variable, and it's going to be of type integer. So int num frames, and this is how many frames we want to store. So you can try any value. Don't make it 1,000 or anything like that, but anywhere between 10 and 100. I'll try 25. Right, and now we need to declare an empty array for x position and y position. So the positions are going to be, let's say that they're going to be floats, and we'll start by declaring an empty array for the x position. Let's call it my x. And if this was just a simple variable that was storing a single value, this was all we would have to do. We would just hit semicolon, and that would be the end of it. But for arrays, we have to change the syntax a little bit. So we want to say that my x is going to be an array, and in order to do so, we need to open and close hard brackets or regular brackets, right? So open and close brackets, then we can say equal to a new float or a new array that has num frames, number of positions to store, right? So we want to store 25, so we're going to use this variable num frames to store how many we're going to have here, right? So we need to, whenever we start, we declare an array, it needs to know how many there are. So it's not dynamic. At the beginning, we need to always define how many there will be. All right, so we're going to do the same thing for the y position. So I typed all that up, so I'm just going to copy and paste, change this variable name to my y. So now we have our empty arrays. And these are just waiting to be used. There's nothing inside them. They're just empty, but they do have 25 slots to store things. Okay? So now we can go into our setup loop, right? And we can define our size and background as we've been doing. So size, I'm going to say, again, 400 by 400. And my background is going to be white, so 255. All right? And that's as far as we need to go now, unless we know that our shapes are always going to be drawn the same way, right? So let's say that they are. So we can actually store the stroke and fill information for our shapes, if they're always going to be the same, inside of the setup structure. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll say fill, and we'll use our cyan color with an opacity, an alpha value, 200. And we'll say that the stroke is going to be white, like we did before. Right? So that will be, unless we change it somewhere else, that will be how all the shapes are drawn. Okay, so let's then drop down into the draw section, and this is going to be fill the arrays using the current position. So if we were doing this kind of longhand and we weren't using the trick, every frame we would have to shift all the values inside of the array in order to open up a new slot for the current position. So basically at the position number 24, because it starts at 0. The index always starts at 0 in an array, so 0 to 24 are my possible positions within the array. Every time I have a new frame, I'd have to make what was stored at position 24 go to position 23. What was position 23 goes to position 22, so that I have a new slot for my current position. We can use a kind of logical workaround here that makes it a lot simpler, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to say that instead of having to go through all of that, we're going to say that we first need to find out, instead of shifting the array, we're just going to replace the current position within the array, which we'll say starting at 5, and then the next one we'll redefine the value at 6, and etc. at 7, etc. And then instead of having them to be in a specific order every time, we'll just shift the order in which we access them. Right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say that there is going to be a variable that is an integer, and this is going to be our replacement index. So I'll call it replace. And this is going to be equal to frame count modulo num frames, right? So num frames is my variable from up here, so I'm going to store 25 positions. So, and frame count is a keyword that we can always access as the program is running, right? It starts at frame 0, then frame 1, frame 2, frame 3. So if we use the modulus or modulo of the number of frames, this will give us an incrementing index for replacement. So it will go 0 to 24, then back to 0 to 24, 0 to 24, 0 to 24. So this will help us redefine what we'll call the current position in the array. Right? So then we'll use that index to redefine the data that's stored in myX at replace index. And we'll just grab the mouse X value. Right? We'll do the same thing for my Y coming from mouse Y. Right? So this is just like a running counter that will always be between 0 and the number of frames that we have. Right? All right, so we're just kind of moving through the array, replacing values as we go through it, each frame. All right, so now we need to set, if we have that stored as we go, now we need to move through the array of positions and draw circles at each one, right? So each frame we're going to end up drawing 25 circles. So in order to achieve that easily, we're going to use our loop, right? We're going to use a loop. So for, just as we saw it in the example, in the presentation, for int I equal to 0, semicolon, I less than the num frames, right? Because this is how many circles we're going to draw. Semicolon, I plus plus. So that will redefine I by incrementing it one value each frame. All right? So just as we did with our function up here, we're going to open curly brackets, and then after the drawing circle pseudocode, we'll close curly brackets. If I hit Control T, that will auto-format, and we don't have any errors here, so it's because it's indenting this successfully. So that all looks good. Okay, now we need to use our replace index as the starting point to loop through all of the positions within our arrays. Right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do another little kind of trick that's related to this one. So we're going to say that we're going to find out, we're going to translate what replace is as an index that starts at 0 and moves up to 24. So a new variable, int index, is going to be equal to, open parentheses, replace plus 1 plus I, which is our counter right here, that's going to be incrementing. All of that, close parentheses, again, modulus num frames. So, what was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of the replacement index, and it's repeating like 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 24. We need to take those, right? So if the current replace value is 2, we need to translate that back into 0, 1, 2, 3, etc., right? So that's what we're doing here with this little expression. All right, so this is going to give us kind of reset our index using replace as the starting point. And then we'll say that we'll draw an ellipse at my x, open brackets, index. So this allows us to access the value that's stored at this position in the array. So we'll do that for x, we'll do that for y, index. And then the size is going to be based on our counter. Right, so the width and height of our ellipse is going to be based on the counter. So it's going to go from 0 up to 24.